Right.
First I did, I was like nervous as hell. I kept like stuttering and stuff.
Yeah, we're just chatting.
Yeah.
It'll be fine. I get so nervous in front of cameras. No, I don't. Not even a little bit.
No, because you got a lot of experience.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time on stage, performing, musical theater, dance, drama, singing.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's what I did. My goal was to be a music teacher, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, that changed rapidly. But here we are.
Yeah, I put your bio up.
Oh,
I'll probably just overlay it after. I'm not gonna read it now.
yeah, no.
But I mean, let's just get into like, well, how'd you get your start in the industry?
Oh man, always enjoyed working out, and then I wrestled in high school, and I was fortunate enough to wrestle with one of our teachers, history teacher, geography teacher. He was actually affiliated with the Canadian Olympic team, one of the coaches. So he was teaching us. We got wrestling, and so I was decent at it. And so I worked with him a lot all the way through high school. So that we started working out there, and I enjoyed it. And then kind of walked away from it for a couple of years. I stopped wrestling after that, and I wrestled at the university, and then stopped after that. And then when I did my I was in a second degree, and I started working out again. I hired a trainer. I figured, why not hire a trainer? So I did, and that's when it started. I started competing, and then he was a great trainer. I studied under him for about 16 years.
Yeah.
I just followed along with him when he did his master's. I followed him, and then he did his doctorate. So then he was my supervisor for my coursework.
And what was your
Exercise science.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we did some neuromuscular rehab stuff and really cool stuff. So we did all that, and then we just kind of went off from there.
Yeah. So now, I mean, what's your main focus? Is it training? Is it your own personal?
Hard to say. I mean, my main focus now is kind of keeping with his legacy, with Peter's legacy. That was the name of my coach.
Yeah.
It kind of instilled in me this idea of improving the industry, right? So we're doing a lot of that, and just trying to make better trainers, better fitness professionals, trying to eliminate the myths and misconceptions and these pervasive beliefs in the industry that seem to, in the face of all evidence to the contrary, people still adhere to. I find that very frustrating.
It's funny. I've spoken to a lot of people that are like personal trainers, and they all kind of have a similar like interest. Both they kind of adopt the beliefs of like a mentor.
Yes.
And they kind of start to follow them in their footsteps, and then wanting to also progress and evolve the art itself. So it's funny because I've heard this before, and I
love that.
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic. As long as it's not dogmatic, okay. Because a lot of times when you fall under the guruism, which we're talking about, you become dogmatic and simply regurgitating that which you were already taught.
So you want to progress.
I want to challenge.
Yeah.
I want to challenge that which I was taught under the crucible of evidence.
Yeah.
And science and scientific methodology, and look for holes in it.
Yeah.
So it's not. How do I say this? It's a lot of times people will look to confirm that which they already believe.
Right.
What's that quote by De Bono? It's oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot. I just read it the other day. It's only through, essentially what it is, I'm going to mangle the quote right now because I've forgotten it, but effectively it's only through constant evaluation of that which you believe, okay, and constantly reevaluation of that which you believe that we progress. Right?
What would be an example of that? What's something that you experienced as like, you know what, this is how everyone just knows it to be, but now it's like, no, it doesn't have, like,
the exercise, the rules of exercise, as if there are rules to exercise. So the idea that there's a rule to how to perform a squat, for example.
Right.
There aren't. I mean, to suggest this is how. Sorry, let me rephrase that. To suggest there's a right and wrong way to perform any exercise, be it a squat, a deadlift, or whatever you want to call it. I find that kind of silly, because how do you determine what the rules are? Right? Mm-hmm. The rules are either.
Did you lose your phone?
There it is.
So you were too quiet. So you had to. I mean, I guess you wanted to talk. You can jump in. You have a mic. I have to make sure my phone is off. That's good. You broke the ice.
I made sure mine was turned down when I walked in, so we're good.
I hit the wrong button there.
Well, so like someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger, that I mean, for me, I think that was one of my like. I remember when I was younger, I used to like casually go to the gym. But I had like no drive, and then would like find myself not really doing it like once a week, and like I don't even care. And then I watched, and this was probably 15 years after it was recorded, I watched Pumping Iron.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to go to the gym now. And I don't even know. And then, not that I wanted to look like that, but it's just like, it reignited my love. And I remember I had an uncle who he would weight train, and he was buff growing up. Oh, I want to do that when I'm older. And then I started doing it, and then just life happens, and I didn't do it anymore. But I always found it interesting. I always gravitate, like whenever I see like a clip on like YouTube or I see like when I'm passing like a magazine rack, I see like Muscle and Fitness or something. I'm tempted to look at it, and I'm like, I know there's a lot of garbage in here.
Of course.
But it also kind of like reignites the fire.
It's nostalgia.
Yeah.
there's an element of nostalgia in what you just said. And I think that grabs all of us. I mean, all of us here have, we were bitten by the iron bug, so to speak, at one point or another. And I think when you pick up that, the Flex magazine or the Muscle and Fitness, or the old school magazines, Iron Man, and remember that. There's or Muscle Mania. No, that was all the different magazines. There's a nostalgia that comes from that. For me, similar to you, I had a cousin who he bodybuilded. He weight trained, and he always had the Flex and the Muscle and Fitness all over. So I would read those, and I'd read about Lee Haney and oh my gosh, Lee Labrada and all those bodybuilders from that era. And it was fascinating, and I was always drawn to it. Plus I was always a big comic book fan. So
sure, I think that's part of it too.
Huge, I without a doubt, there was so much influence from the comic books and wanting to look like that super heroic physique. Yeah.
Because it was somewhat attainable. Like you could kind of be a superhero.
Well, you could see, right? You could see. Oh, look, I'm looking at a drawing of Captain America, for example, the perfect physical specimen, literally, and then looking at a photo of one of these bodybuilders of the time and going, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
There it is. I can look like Captain America if I want to, and that was there was certainly a draw to that, or the Masters of the Universe action figures. Yeah. Remember those? He-Man and all those different body types. That was another thing. Total dysmorphia came out of those.
Well, you brought up that word, and at what point do you find that it can diverge into something that's like a compulsiveness? It's no longer about health.
What's his name? Oh my gosh, why am I blanking on his name? Former Mr. Olympia from England. Oh my gosh, after Lee Haney.
Dorian Yates.
Dorian Yates. Oh my God, I can't believe I blanked. Sorry, Dorian.
I don't think he's gonna watch it.
No, but regardless, the man had so much influence on the industry, and I totally blanked on his name. He said, I believe it was him that said, I'm pretty sure, it said, jogging is good for you. Lifting weights is good for you. Running a marathon, doing a bodybuilding competition isn't necessarily healthy. So I think it's just a matter of, it's all on a spectrum, right? So when does it become an obsession? When it starts to hurt.
Yeah.
I think when you weigh the cost and benefit and say, oh, okay, I'm spending, tens of thousands of dollars. That's not an exaggeration.
No, for sure.
To win a cheap plastic trophy
that
isn't going to take me anywhere. To some regional show, and you've got young guys in their 20s literally spending tens of thousands on drugs and supplements and coaching and all this other stuff, and they win a plastic trophy that they could buy for $20.
And they don't get even like the money. Like
no, and there's nothing out of it. I mean,
no, you're down. You're definitely down.
Yeah.
Even if you win, you're down.
Yeah, a pat on the back. That's what you get.
That's.
I mean, ultimately in the industry, and I think this is where the magazines have kind of done a great job of creating a lifestyle. The impression of a lifestyle is that, oh, look at this. You know, you see the photos of the bodybuilders doing all these fun things and living this life on the beach with the girls and all that other stuff. You know, the beer commercial life, and then, but ultimately, it's only the top few guys that make any money doing this.
It's not even 1%.
No, not a fraction. Literally the top, maybe the top 10.
Yeah, not
maybe.
even. Yeah,
that's a great point. Because like I have many. Well, no, I have quite a few friends that were actually pros.
Yeah.
Scott Milton and all that. And
Yeah.
like, you know, they had to work regular jobs. Like,
Of course they did. Yeah.
I mean, the facade is just basically the magazines. Like they don't really portray real life.
Well, to even be close to looking like the guys in the magazine, that's your job.
That's your job. Yeah.
You can't have a full-time job, and realistically, or you can have a life, you can have a family.
If it's a very tough life, and it's a very lonely life for some of these bodybuilders.
Oh, for sure.
Because all they're doing, and nothing against them. I think they're very dedicated, and I think that they're athletes too. But their lifestyle is basically just working out most of the time, and then resting, eating, preparing food. It's a really kind of structured life, which is tough for some people.
It's hermetic almost, like it's living like a hermit. Certainly, it could also almost be described as ascetic, right? Ascetic, because you're living a life of. It's not abundance. Like you're restricting almost everything.
You're denying yourself all the luxuries of life, all the treats.
Yes.
And because you have to be so disciplined, and even if you cheat, there's the fear of it compromising, and then there's the guilt.
Yes, that goes along with it.
Yeah. I mean,
and then on the flip side,
a lot of these guys, they're not in competition mode all year round.
Yeah.
Like, they do go into off season, so they do enjoy themselves at times when they're off and not actually.
But then when they are on, they're all on.
Yeah, it
has to be.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, I was going to say then the contrast on the flip side of that is the same personalities that they're so disciplined and so focused on the result. When they're not, they become quite self-destructive, and by the partying, big time, the drinking, the drugs, the late night partying, the all these.
What lends itself to that? Like, is it just because now you're this buff looking guy that maybe you're getting more attention, or you're just hanging out in bad circles, or you're looking for some kind of reward because you're putting in all this effort and you're not getting anything out of it tangibly?
Well, that's a good question because I lived in Texas for about a year. Just to, I was just partnering around, and I was actually hanging out with a lot of bodybuilders, and it's a very niche network, right? It's a very close-knit
group,
because no one really else on the outside understands.
Yeah.
Like,
hey, we're going to go out to a steakhouse. No.
Yeah, they can't really fathom the idea of like all the stuff that these guys have.
It's such a commitment.
Yeah, so it's more of that kind of close-knit network that they're always kind of like, let's go out, let's go do this.
So if there's like a bad seed in that group, then everyone kind of follows suit.
I think it's more what you said earlier, the list you made. I think it's all of those, but I also think it's based on the type of personality that's drawn to the lifestyle.
Like a compulsive personality.
Obsessive.
But anyone who's could be compulsive about like
anything. Yeah. In this case, it's compulsive about manipulating your body, right? But at the same time, there's also a level of insecurity.
Sure.
I think anybody who goes and becomes here we are going to psychoanalyze the typical bodybuilder.
But I think there's a character type there.
100%.
It has to.
100%. There's a narcissism. There's a maybe borderline personality. There's certainly going to be some OCD. There's going to be lots of insecurities.
Yeah. There's going to be the high school bully who's big and he can gain muscle. Then there's the little guy simplex. Is like he's always small. He wants to kind of get even.
Yep.
And then there's the guy who's like I have the time. I can spend 12 hours at the gym and or I'm looking for that extreme high and I'll take whatever extra stuff that's illicit just to get their gains faster than everyone else. So yeah, I think that there is character types that you can that's where the temptation lies, and if you can't weather that or temper those temptations, then then all that effort kind of goes down the drain.
And that's, this kind of ties into, you mentioned illicit drugs and illicit materials, be they recreational or performance enhancing. The notion of roid rage. Oh, it's going to make you angry and make you commit crimes. The Chris Benoit story, very famously. It was the steroids. Well, I think what happens, and I think what it is when you take these drugs, I mean, if you're already a terrible human being, it's simply going to exacerbate that personality trait.
Pushes you over that line.
Push over that line, yeah.
I have to agree on that.
Yeah. But the drugs themselves aren't going to make you want to kill your family. I mean, the fact that Chris Benoit also had massive amounts of cocaine and some other methamphetamines in his system, no one talks about that. They just talk about the fact that he had elevated levels of testosterone.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, he also was on the road probably every night of the year, and when in intense pain, and probably taking tons of narcotics to numb himself. So that's a ticking time bomb.
No, without question.
So how do you stay in the industry and survive and thrive? Because we talked about it's easy to talk about all the pitfalls and the problems and the black eyes on the sport, but where's the balance?
I think you have to be able to be objective. And by that I mean, so using myself, my mentor and coach, whom I mentioned, Peter Chiasson was his name. He's passed away a few years ago, I guess now almost 9 years ago. He was a bodybuilder, so he got me into that scene as well. And we would go to the shows, we would go to the after parties, we would go to all of that. Fortunately, the illicit drugs and partying was never a big part of it. One, because that was never part of my lifestyle. I just never enjoyed it. I've never been drunk. I can't say that's not something I do. And also, same with him. He was never a big fan of that. So we simply never got into that. I know many of our colleagues who were friends at the time, you mentioned a few, very much so. And incidentally, I should say, Peter passed away in a motorcycle accident. It had nothing to do with his health. It was a traumatic event. Whereas many of our I was thinking about them today, some of the Scott and Nelson and some of those other big-time bodybuilders who've passed away through health issues. They were big time into that scene. It was a big part of their lives for a while. And that's not to disparage them, I'm just saying that's what they did. And I think that as a result, it's like anything. It's one thing to indulge once in a while, but it becomes part of your life, and it's something that you're doing constantly that's going to catch up to you. Coupled with all the other stresses you put in your body, training is tremendously stressful, especially at that level. Regardless of whether you're using performance-enhancing drugs or not, and it's very stressful. The eating, the massive amounts of food, just the metabolic stress is enormous, and eventually it's going to catch up to you.
Yeah.
So, and I think that the balance that you're saying that you mentioned is being able to step back and say, okay, I'm going to stop. One thing that I learned with working with Peter, for example, was he would after a show, he would take 2 months off and not touch a weight. In fact, I remember at one point when he started studying, when he got serious about his studies and he started doing the graduate work, he didn't lift a weight for well over a year at all. And so he just became normal, he looked like a normal guy, 5'8". He was walking around at 260, 270 pounds routinely. And then he went back to normal. He lost 70, 80 pounds, something like that. He was running 180, 190 when he stopped working out. And so, he would encourage me to do the same. And so we would stop and we would just live life normally for a few weeks at a time before going back to it. But yeah, I think that's the key, being able to recognize when you've kind of pushed it to that limit, understanding what your limits are.
Yes.
You're not invulnerable. Yes, you may have a 20-inch arm, for example, and a 58-inch chest, but you're certainly not invulnerable.
Yeah.
And and that's what we've seen sometimes.
So I would say, it's one way of looking at it is you actually have intention. So you create a goal. I say it's a competition. So it's what you need to do to get to that point. You know how much time and the preparation. And then after that competition, why are you working out so hard? Like you would ask yourself that question, like, why am I here at 5 a.m.?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, okay, my next competition's in 8 months from now. So it's like, well, if I only need 2 months to prepare, then that means the next 6 months I can sort of relax a bit.
Take the foot off the gas a little bit.
So that's how you're like tempering, like you have the skill set and you have the drive, but it's like, but what's my intention? It's like, if I don't need to look like this all year round.
Yeah.
Some guys want to.
Some guys do.
But that's exactly, I was just thinking that while we're speaking. We talked earlier about the personality traits and the characteristics of someone who would go into this. And there's an element of, and again, I speak for myself, having been doing this now for 26 years, I can tell you, your identity becomes wrapped up in your size. Mm-hmm. And
what if someone comes up to you like, dude, you got small, what happened?
It's happened in just the last year, for example, for sure. And because I definitely am significant, I've lost a significant amount of size in this last year, but I'm also 48, right? So I'm not.
But that's an ego thing.
Absolutely.
That someone's like, and then you go start lifting weights.
Exactly.
So see me next week.
Yeah, and it definitely is an ego shot, no question. But again, now as mentioned, I'm 48 now, so I'm able to say, okay, I don't need to be 300 pounds with abs. It's just not. It's not a necessary component of my life anymore. But certainly 10 years ago, when I had, so for example, my wife and I at the time were trying to get pregnant. So I stopped working out. 5 to 7 months, something like that. Stopped everything, supplements, working out, everything. I was working at a gym. I was running a gym at the time, and I didn't even touch a weight. And I lost.
Why?
Why did I stop?
Why did you stop? Like
we were having challenges getting.
So you just sort of wanted to clean out and just see if like you can optimize your health. I get it.
Yeah, that was the point, and also because she made me.
Okay.
She's a very focused woman with very specific intentions, and anyway, and so I stopped everything, and I lost about 40 pounds, right? And I remember it was a significant challenge to my ego, significant challenge, and I could understand why some guys who perhaps don't have the strength of character or don't have anything else. I had many other things in my life that I was working on that I could now focus my energies on. Someone who doesn't have that or didn't have that, I could see how this would be devastating to them. Devastating.
I mean, obviously, you kind of did that sacrifice for like a greater good, for a family and for your spouse. And before you had mentioned, I think I asked you about like when does bodybuilding become a problem? It's like when it actually starts like interfering with your life. It starts like compromising what you value, and that is very true for mental health because there's activities that people do that we can say is like borderline OCD, or it's like someone's overtraining, someone who is under eating or overly conscientious about their diet. Yeah. And it's like, well, it's based on health, but when does it become a problem? And it's usually the statement is like, at what point does it start interfering with your normal life? Like you can't just carry on. Like you won't eat at a restaurant, or you won't eat what everyone else is eating, or you have to like miss family get-togethers because you're training. And sometimes that's where you start seeing that there's like, okay, well, I'm doing this, but like, I really would like to be like going on vacation, but I'm going to train. And it's like, but what for?
What for?
And that's I think that's the ultimate question. Is like, if you're doing something, you have that commitment. You're starting to climb a mountain. You're either going all the way up, or halfway you're going to be like, am I turning back down? And it's like you're already going up, so your drive is already there.
I always encourage people. So I have these conversations daily. In fact, I had it today, this exact conversation where someone says to me, I want to lose a bunch of weight. Obviously, I make sure they understand it's fat, not weight, etc. I want to get in shape. I want to look good. I always ask, is your goal is to, for 99% of the people who work out, the goal is to look good naked. So they can get laid more, frankly. That's why most people work out. Yes, even the married ones, yes. Because everybody wants to feel good about themselves. When they look in the mirror, they want to feel good about what they're looking at. And yes, there's health issues and there's other things like that, certainly. But for the vast majority of people who decide to pick up a dumbbell or to go to a gym, it's because they want to look good naked, which is fine.
It's not to lower cholesterol?
Is it possible? Shall we talk about that study now?
Next time.
Next time. But yeah, and regardless, but then taking from there, I say, okay, great. I'm a big proponent of low and slow. Take your time and incorporate it into your lifestyle effectively, and you'll be okay. Oh, but I want really quick results. Great, then give me 12 weeks. You're going to work out 5 to 6 days a week, twice a day. You're going to eat nothing but what I tell you, and absolutely nothing more, nothing less than what I tell you. You're going to, again, working out twice a day minimum, probably for a total of 3 to 4 hours a day. You'll have no life. You will not go to any social events. You'll do nothing for the next 12 weeks. You will hate your life, and your family will disown you.
Yep.
How's that? But you'll look great.
I'm sure you got a few people that will be like, okay, maybe initially.
Initially, certainly.
Most people will run.
And it ties into what I would do when I was coaching. I remember one year I coached a whole group of women for a competition, and I had 7 or 8 women. And I remember I said to them, okay, it was part of something that we're doing at the gym. It was a promotion we were doing, and I remember saying I had dozens of women come in, say they wanted to do this. I said, great. Then I had an information session, and I said, make sure you bring your spouses. Mm-hmm. Okay, make sure you bring your spouses. And they all came. And I explained to them what it's going to be like for the next 13 to 14 weeks, 16 weeks, I think it was, and what they're going to go through and the support that the spouse is going to have to put. So from those dozens, I ended up with 7 after that conversation.
That you shouldn't have had that information session.
Well, but I can tell you, I'm sure I saved a bunch of marriages with that process.
Yeah,
that's really
sure.
what it was, right? And to me, this was not something that I was getting paid for. It was something I was doing more to prove a point.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't going to, but yeah, it was, and I often have that with people. I say, if you're going to compete, before you do, think about it.
The vision in their mind is much more appealing before they know what goes into it.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And listen, I have nothing but respect for people who decide to compete in physique competitions. That's one of the most difficult things you can do, period, for a sustained amount of time. But you have to really, really want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen it cause many, like my marriage. It wasn't because of that, but it was a big part. It was a big part of the challenges we had. Not with my competing, her competing. I'd finished competing by that point. And it put a major strain on our relationship, major strain.
Yeah.
And so I know that, I lived that. So I'm always very vocal in warning people, not warning, but rather be considerate, think carefully.
Yeah.
Have you considered this before you do it?
Well, what would, like you said, consider this, and I'm thinking like, well, what would be like a middle ground? Like someone who's coming to you like, well, I want to look better, I want to feel better, but I don't want to like live here.
Yeah, book a photo shoot.
Okay, what's
book
that?
A photo shoot. That's what I say. Book a photo shoot, and we can prepare as if you're doing a competition, but the timeline's a little flexible because you can always reschedule a photo shoot. You can't reschedule a competition. And
so that's like the finish line.
That's the finish line.
That gives them a kind of like a goal to aim for. I'm like, okay, this
and
is
you
what
have
I'm
something to keep.
Yeah,
right. You have something to keep.
That's your trophy.
Yes, and so my current partner came to me, when she turned 40, and she said, I want to do a photo shoot, and no interest in competing at all, which is fine. I wasn't interested in helping her with that, and so it's great, and that's exactly what we did. But I remember saying to her, I will do nothing to compromise your health in this process. So it's going to be slow, and it's going to be careful, and it's going to be very measured. And that's what we did. And I think we did it over, typical contest prep is 12 to 15 weeks, 16 weeks. I think we did it over, it was almost like 5 or 6 months. Like we really took our time. Really took our time, and there was also, she had some hormonal issues and other things that we were sorting out in the process, but that became very exacerbated during, and we became clear. So yeah, but that was low and slow. She did wonderful, did a couple of photo shoots, had a great time, and that's it.
And from there, what do you feel like is the moving forward point? Like, do you find that, so you kind of peak, you do your photo shoot, or you kind of reach that momentary goal? And then is there some kind of like maintenance? It's like, okay, I don't have to be so cut. I can cheat a little bit, but I actually am motivated to kind of maintain this as a lifestyle. Do you find that that's usually the
almost invariably
result? Yeah.
Almost invariably, that's exactly what happens. And that's what, again, when you prepare an athlete prior and you prepare them for life post competition, because that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
And letting them know, hey, after the competition, you're going to be feeling these things. There's wonderful articles written by some really great competitors out there about post-competition blues and depression and those kinds of things. And it's real. It's a genuine thing. So you prepare them for it, and then you explain, okay, you're not going to look like that. You can't sustain that look. It's not reasonable.
That's your peak. In a lot of ways, maybe you're even a weak point.
It's like if you take a blade and you hone it super fine and you get that really tight apex at the sharpest apex. Obsidian, for example, can reach a molecule's thin edge. Great for one cut. That's it.
Yeah.
And then it dulls. Right? And so that's just it. The sharper the blade, the less durable it is.
Sure.
So that's what I'm saying. You're not going to maintain that, and
you have to sustain something that's maybe just a little bit less.
Yeah. So
and that's okay.
And it's great. So I tell people, usually it may be 6 weeks out. Probably you could sustain that fairly easily, not easily, but with concerted effort, you could sustain it reasonably so, right? If that's something you really wanted. But yeah, maintaining contest, like stage-ready condition it's ridiculous.
Well, your body...
You can't.
Yeah, you can't. Your body changes daily, right? So it's like you can't maintain a body fat of like 3% like all the time.
And the water reduction, right?
Yeah. It goes all like it's constantly messing with your hormones and everything. It's crazy.
You did mention a lot in terms of like the state of the art and the science. What are some things that maybe has come to your attention in the last few years that have really kind of elevated the sport and the ability of individuals, whether it's the rate of muscle growth or recovery, anything? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in nutrition.
Yeah.
The notion of, for example, reverse dieting has been a powerful one. There's been a lot of great work done by, in the last few years, Brad Schoenfeld has been doing some really great work on understanding actual hypertrophy.
Yeah. Could you speak to like a specific, like what would, like what's something that we thought before? Like, I mean, everyone just eat like chicken and broccoli.
Yeah. I mean, that was just today. For example, today, Lane Norton, Dr. Lane Norton. Norton? Yeah. That's his name?
I think so.
Lane? Yeah. Anyway, Lane Norton, great guy. Great website, great business that he does. And he put something out today, the notion of flexible dieting versus clean eating, in quotes, which was the traditional, chicken and broccoli. The idea of flexible dieting, if it fits your macros. And effectively, again, another big study that looked very carefully at it. Yes, you can do it. In fact, I have. I've had I helped a fellow get ready for a contest. He didn't want to eat chicken and broccoli, and he didn't like to eat a lot of food, so he ate pancakes, bacon, and Pop-Tarts, and protein shakes. Okay, that's what it was, and it fit his macros. Obviously, he was not eating a lot of food because those are calorically dense foods, but that's what he wanted, and he was able to do it, and he won, and he looked great.
Wow.
Yeah. Again, a bit of an anomaly.
Is that more like, maybe in your opinion, that's just like he had a unique genetic and physiological?
I don't think it was unique. I think his physiology made it easier for him than most because he was eating, the volume of food he was eating was tiny. In terms of actual food volume in his belly, in his stomach, but he was okay with that.
Do you think if he did the typical diet, but hated it, he'd get the same results?
I don't know. But that's a great question because now we start talking about the psychology behind it. Would he have stuck to it if he hated it? Now let's assume he did. I think. Yeah, I think so. Yes, because I think there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's no right or wrong way. I just think there's more appropriate, and this goes to my philosophy in general of exercise. There's no good or bad exercise. There's no right or wrong way. We started with it's what is most appropriate for the individual. You know. So yes, I think we could have got him ready doing that. But would it have been as enjoyable for him? No. Would he have gotten the same result? Well, if you're not enjoying something, you're probably not going to adhere to it as well, or as certainly not as much. So possibly, right? I can't say for certain, but yeah, I mean, we know we know the clean eating approach works, and as much as I hate to say it, but we also know the flexible eating approach, flexible diet method works. So I think it just, again, these are getting back to what I was saying earlier about guruism and dogma. You know, oh, you have to do keto, you have to do clean eating. No, you don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
Right. And this is my point. You find what works for the individual, and then you establish that.
So I like that.